Hey there, how are y'all today? I'm just moving a message from showing up. My name is Tracy Adams and I am a health and fitness coach. I'm founder of Daily Dose of Tracy, which is where I am right now. On my business page, you can also find me at Tracy Chapin Adams. And I have to tell you, so I have recently been talking to people about my new nutritional plan that I've been sharing with people, and I have dubbed it the Freedom and Hope Nutritional Plan, simply because since I have implemented it, I have felt so much freedom from food, as well as I've seen it give a lot of people hope that they haven't had in a very long time. Hope that they could again lose weight and get back to some clothes that maybe they haven't fit in for a few years. And my mom, of course, is going to be one of my biggest fans, right? And so she said to me the other day, she was like, okay, so I was going to buy coconut oil, but I noticed it's hard in the jar. What's the deal? And I was like, oh, it just has a higher melting point. And so depending on in the wintertime here in Florida, I'll pull my coconut oil out of the jar and it'll be hard. And during the summertime when I pull it out, it's like a liquid. And I was like, so don't worry about it. You can just scoop it out, or you can run it under warm water, no big deal. Funny story though, I said, but I will tell you that it has a very low burning point. So, and I'm going to talk about some of the other oils on this live video, but this is just too funny. Great way to start out. My husband and my son were in the pool one day, and I was going to make stir fry, and the recipe called for, I don't know, vegetable oil, canola oil, whatever. I don't use that crap, okay? And I'll tell you why in a second. So I modified the recipe, and I had my, how when you do stir fry, it always says, have your wok, oh, thank you, Shay. It says, have your wok so hot that if you splash a little bit of water in there, it'll sizzle. So I had my wok nice and hot, and then I get my 2 tablespoons coconut oil that I'm ready to put in there. I put it in there, and all of a sudden it was like, and it seriously looked like a witch's cauldron. There was smoke everywhere. The fire alarm went off, and when stuff like that happens, I'm like this. What do I do? What do I do? Where do I start? And I just don't know what to do. I completely freak out. And I open the back door, and my husband's in the pool, and he's like, what is going on? And I'm like, I'm burning coconut oil. I don't know what to do. And he's like, open up the house, open up the doors, turn the fans on. Did you turn the burner off? Because he knows that in moments like that, my brain turns off and I panic. So I would say that having a low burning point is probably the only bad thing about coconut oil. So my mom says to me today, I called home. Of course, it's Father's Day. I wanted to call home and wish my dad a happy Father's Day and make sure that my mom remembered to give him the gift I gave her 6 weeks ago. So even I had forgotten about it. I had a moment of panic. Did I get Dad a present? And I was like, oh yeah, I did. I sent it home with Mom. And she's like, hey, by the way, I bought coconut oil the other day, and USA Today just published an article on coconut oil being bad. As a matter of fact, I do have some notes, people, because I tend to get verbose at times, and I wanted to make sure that I stayed focused. But the name of the article is Coconut Oil Isn't Healthy. It's never been healthy. And this was published yesterday. And of course, I roll my eyes because I'm like, seriously? In my opinion, that is so irresponsible. And I will make my argument here. But I was like, you know what, Mom, I'm so glad you said something. I am going to actually address this. I'm probably going to do a live video later today on it, but you are good. Do not worry. Coconut oil is perfectly healthy. Okay? So a lot of this comes down to saturated fats versus unsaturated fats. Okay? And coconut oil is 90% of coconut oil is a saturated fat. Now, years ago, they deemed, sorry, I'm getting distracted by my neighbors out in their front yard because the lighting in here is weird. So I actually have my window open, or not open, but I have the shutters open and light coming in so I don't have a bunch of glare, because normally when I do live videos, my glasses are and what have you. But okay, so a lot of the information around heart disease and diet for preventing heart disease comes down to recommendations around saturated fat versus unsaturated fat. Like that's not it's not the bottom line, but there's a lot of information and debate out there about that. But one thing that you need to realize is like back in the 60s or the 70s, I can't remember the exact timing, fat was demonized. Fat became the villain because they were trying to figure out like what is making people gain weight, what is causing obesity, what is causing heart disease, whereas actually heart disease wasn't really on the rise. It was just that the people were living longer, okay? And so, you know, from 1900 to 1950 and then 1950 to 1960, the life expectancy of a man in America had increased. And so because of that, because of things like antibiotics, people weren't dying of random bacterial infections or tuberculosis. And so the actual like age expectancy was going up, and people were actually living long enough to have a heart attack. Okay, and so there was a lot of debate about what was causing this, and actually it was leaning more towards sugar and some slipping of Benjamin Franklin. Some money went under the table and they pointed the finger at fat. Okay, never in history was anybody ever afraid of eating fat until that happened. Okay, and then all of a sudden, you know, in some random, and I can't remember the name of the meeting, but it was a congressional committee that got together and came up with that pyramid that shows you how much you're supposed to eat in terms of fat, carbohydrates, fruits, vegetables, sugars, what have you. And it was all decided by a bunch of politicians, and there was no data to support what they came up with. So all of a sudden, Mom's no longer telling you what to eat, okay? Uncle Sam is. And that blows my mind. Like it makes no sense whatsoever, okay? So, the point of me sharing that is, you need to know that there are so many different companies in bed with researchers and the government and what have you. Did you know how subsidized processed foods are? If you go through the grocery store and you just shop the outer perimeter, which is all the perishables, yes, pharmache. If you just shop the perimeter, it is so much more expensive. And then if you go up and down the aisles, guess what? It's cheaper. And that's because the government subsidizes all of that food and makes it cheaper. Because Monsanto, which is, I mean, they're responsible, do you know the percentage, Shay? They're responsible for a certain percent, I mean, a ginormous amount of food that is put out into our grocery stores. And they are all over our government. Okay, so that's not why I got on here though. I want to talk about coconut oil. All right. So we talked about like how there's a lot of debate around saturated fats versus unsaturated fats. Okay, some saturated fats would be 90% of coconut oil is saturated fat, so that would be considered a saturated fat. Butter is a saturated fat. Any fat that is in a steak and beef, that's saturated fat. Tallow, which would be like lard from an animal, that is saturated fat. And then you have your unsaturated fats, okay? An example or a couple of examples of a healthy unsaturated fat would be avocado oil or olive oil, okay? Salmon also has some unsaturated fat in it. And then you also have your vegetable oils. So what's a vegetable oil? When you go into the grocery store and you see your Wesson oil, it's corn oil or canola oil, your, what is it? Crisco vegetable oil, like those are your unsaturated fats, okay? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't ever cook with a vegetable oil. Canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, rapeseed oil, soybean oil, none of it. And let me tell you why, okay? Do you, and I didn't have time to like dig deep enough to figure out if the manufacturers of these oils are major funding sources to like the American Heart Association or what have you. I cannot for the life of me figure out why anybody who is truly invested, whether it's emotionally, financially, whatever, invested in the health of a human being would recommend this kind of oil, okay? I cannot figure it out. I didn't have time to look it up, but once you hear what I have to say, I think you're gonna agree with me. And excuse me, I need to take a sip of water. All right, first of all, do you know how vegetable oils are made? All right, listen, if you're getting bored, you need to listen to this, all right? So, vegetable oils are extracted from various seeds, okay? In very unnatural ways, all right? So we're gonna use canola oil as an example. But before I do that, I want to tell you, well, no, we're gonna talk about how vegetable oil is made first, or canola oil. Okay, so here is how they make canola oil. First, you need to find some canola seeds. Oh wait, there is no such thing as a canola seed. There's no such thing. I don't even know how they came up with the name canola. So, because there's no such thing, they actually make it from a hybrid version of a rapeseed. I don't even know what the hell a rapeseed is, but it doesn't sound like anything I want to eat, and I can tell you right now, it's not in the Greenwise bulk food section of Publix, it's not at Trader Joe's, and it's not at Whole Foods, and it doesn't sound good. And it's because it's a hybrid version, it's probably GMO, it's probably been exposed to a ton of pesticides. And by the way, did you know that pesticides are all kinds of endocrine disruptors? So they're gonna freaking mess with your hormones, okay? And if any of you have a friend that has any type of thyroid problem and they talk about, oh, I have thyroid disorder, I can't lose weight. Yeah, you don't want to mess with your thyroid, okay? So no pesticides, that's not good. All right, so they squeeze the rape seeds. Can't even believe that's a real thing. And then they heat it to a very, very high temperature so that it's oxidized. Yes, it's a frankenfood. Till it's oxidized. And I don't know about y'all, but oxidize is never, as far as I know, it's not really a good thing, okay? Until it's oxidized and rancid, all right? So already there's 2 strikes against you. There's really not anything I want to eat that has oxidation written on it as well as rancid, but we're gonna keep going because that's part of the process, okay? So that was step 2. Step 3, they process it with a petroleum solvent, okay, to extract the oils. All right, so they take a petroleum solvent to get the oils out of the seed that they're processing. And like I said here, we're talking about a rapeseed oil, all right? Then they heat it some more. I'm gonna go ahead and pull my notes up so I don't have to keep looking down. They heat it up some more and they add some acid to remove any of the nasty wax solids that are formed during the first processing. Ew, okay, but that's not it, okay? So we squeezed it and we oxidized it and we made it rancid, and then we heated it up and put in a petroleum solvent so that we could extract the oils, and then we heat it up some more and add some acid to remove any of the nasty wax solids that formed during the first processing, okay? And then after that, they treat it with some more chemicals to improve the color. And then step number 6 is that they deodorize it to mask the horrific smell from all of the chemical processing. That is how your vegetable oil is made. That's how your canola oil is made. That's how your corn oil is made. Please tell me how this is healthy. Tell me how anybody, any organization, association that actually cares about whether you have heart disease or not, whether you have a risk of cardiovascular disease, how can they put their name behind that? Okay, but here's my biggest question. So we talked about, we squeezed, we pressed the seed, And then we heated it to a really high temperature until it oxidized and became rancid. And then we processed it with a petroleum solvent to extract the oils. And then we heated it some more and added some acid to it. I don't know about y'all, but my mom told me not to do acid. Added some acid to it to remove any nasty wax solids that formed during the processing. Then we had to add some more chemicals to it to make it look better. And then we had to process it even more so it didn't smell nasty. Okay, so my question to you is, if you were there watching them do this, would you go, because I'll tell you what, like, I love to bake, I love to make cupcakes. My cupcakes are the best, all right? So would I take a third of a cup, measuring cup, up to this nastiness, scoop it out, and go use it to bake a cake? Hell no! Hell no! And and that is why I ended up with a cauldron wok of burning coconut oil that day, because I didn't realize that it had a low flash point where it would burn. But there was no way I was putting canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, any of that crap in my food, what I'm going to feed to myself, my husband, my children, the people that I love and are nearest, dearest to my heart. Okay? So if that's not enough to convince you that these unsaturated fats are actually a better choice for you than something like coconut oil, and I am going to get back to coconut oil in a minute, let's talk about the polyunsaturated fat issue. Okay? So, first of all, vegetable oils have a very high level of, and do you know why they have to process the living hell out of anything to get a vegetable, a canola, a corn, a vegetable oil? Because they're not very high in fat. I mean, when was the last time you entered like vegetables into MyFitnessPal or what have you? How much fat is in a head of broccoli or a cup or two of spinach? Not very much. Or corn for that matter. I mean, GMO or non-GMO. There's not a lot of fat in there. And so why would we want to make an oil out of it? I don't understand. And I'm so grateful that I've become the nutrition geek that I am, so I know better than to feed this crap to my children, because not in my house. So, all right, so vegetable oils have a very high levels of polyunsaturated fats, okay? Now, you need to know that our body's fat content is primarily saturated fat as well as monounsaturated fat, all right? So why are we feeding ourselves polyunsaturated fats, all right? First of all, polyunsaturated fats, they're very unstable. They oxidize easily, okay? Oxidization, is that a word? Causes inflammation as well as mutation of our cells. Like, that's not good, okay? And then you take it a step further, and if I haven't already convinced you after talking to you about the process that we go through to get these types of vegetable oils, and then the whole instability of a polyunsaturated fat and what happens with it, these fats have a very high concentration of omega-6 fatty acids. Well, guess what, all right? The reason why there is so much noise in marketing, you look at things tout, a very high omega-3 fatty acid content. Well, guess what? The problem is, the reason being is because it's the ratio that matters. So it's the amount of omega-3 fatty acid to omega-6 fatty acid that really matters. The American diet, the modern day diet, has such a high level of omega-6 fatty acid that we are trying so hard to increase our omega-3 fatty acid to get that ratio back to where it needs to be. All right, omega-6 fatty acids have no nutritional benefit. All right, but the problem is that all the processed foods that are there, every place that you go to for fast food, even Chick-fil-A, I love me some Chick-fil-A, but I can tell you right now, it's not good for you. Those are going to raise your omega-6 fatty acids, okay, which is going to whack out your ratio. And guess what happens with that? You get an increase in inflammation. And what does inflammation lead to? Inflammation is the cause of most of the diseases in our society today. All right, so that's another reason why any type of vegetable oil, canola, corn, vegetable, rapeseed, any of those oils, no bueno, no bueno, not good for you, okay? All right, so I talked to you about how these vegetable oils are processed, how we get them, all right? And I'm pretty darn sure that, hi Tracy, hi Kelly, hi Diane, thank you guys for logging on, it means a lot to me. I talked to you about how those vegetable oils, canola oils, corn oil, what have you, comes to be. And I'm pretty sure that after just hearing how that happens, there's no way in hell you are ever going to buy it again, bake a cake with it again. I don't care if you can heat it to 700 degrees. I'm pretty sure you're not going to do stir fry with it either. All right. But let's talk about how, yes, Mom, no acid. I didn't know you were on. Hello. Thanks for prompting me to do this video. Let's talk about how butter is made. Okay. So you have like regular milk, like it's just come from the cow, right? And you let it sit long enough and the cream rises to the top, all right? They scrape the cream off and then they put it in whatever. Like I know what it was like when I went to the farm when I was in kindergarten or whatever, and like they used a churn, but I'm sure that's not what it looks like now. But you shake the cream long enough or you mix it long enough and boom, you have butter. Now I would take 1/3 of a cup of that and put it in my cake batter to make a cake. I know that that's not how you're supposed to, but my point being is like, yes, I would eat that. I would put that in my body. Okay, what about coconut oil or olive oil? All right, those are just pressed. You squeeze the living daylights out of an olive and you have olive oil. I mean, I know it's not that simplistic, but I'm making it simple for this. You squeeze some coconut and you get coconut oil. That's really what it comes down to. Would you eat that? Does that seem natural? Does to me. Yeah. So number one, the way that some of these unsaturated fats are created, it's just a bunch of bullshit. Okay, and it's a bunch of companies that are in bed with the government and whatever, and they make all these recommendations. Doesn't mean that it's healthy. All right, it's not. I have not addressed the actual clinical studies that are referenced in the article on USA Today. I'm not going to here, all right? I'm gonna say, do your research, people. Like, read or find someone that you trust. Like, I was talking to one of my customers the other day, and I've worked with her for over a year. And, I introduced her to the Freedom and Hope nutritional plan. And she's like, you know what? I was doing some other research, and I was on this one blog site, and it recommended this and this, and I was just like, ooh, you know what? I want to talk to Tracy before I make any recommendations because she trusts me. She knows I do my research, I do my due diligence, I read, and I take my job seriously. I'm not ever going to just willy-nilly recommend something to someone because I read it in USA Today, okay? So do your research. I'm not a doctor. But I'm a smart cookie and I do my research. And so work with someone that you trust. But here's a couple things that I want to mention. All right, so did you know that there are studies out there that conclude there is no correlation whatsoever between saturated fat intake, blood cholesterol, and heart disease? I'm going to repeat that. There's no correlation between saturated fat intake, blood cholesterol, and heart disease, okay? Now, somebody may have an increased intake of saturated fat and they may have heart disease, but there's no correlation between the two, okay? There's no causal relationship, all right? And just to drive that home, I have to grab my computer for this one. My husband has high cholesterol, okay? And it's funny because I did not tell you earlier that I was a speech pathologist on a brain injury unit for almost 6 years, and then I was a pharmaceutical representative for 16 years. The first couple years I sold medications in the cardiovascular arena, including a statin, which everybody knows you take a statin to lower your cholesterol. After that, it was mental health, and that's a totally different animal. But my husband worked in the cardiovascular arena for many, many years, and now he is actually in the diabetes arena. So anywho, he takes medication for his cholesterol, and this was not planned, but he had his blood work done, and then literally like the day after, he started the Freedom and Hope nutritional plan. And then, so his blood work initially was done on May 10th, and then he had it done again on May 26th. I think we're about to have a kid come running in here, which is fine, that's life. All right, so after 2 weeks of the Freedom and Hope nutritional plan, and you know what, if anything, I'm not sharing this with you to say, hey, do the Freedom and Hope nutritional plan and I'll fix all your cholesterol problems. My point is food is medicine, okay? You have way more control than you think you have, all right? So his total cholesterol went from 208 to 168. Okay, that's a 50-point drop. His LDL, and your LDL is your bad cholesterol. That's the one that the doctors want to see come down. All right, it went from 117 to 89. And when I'm done going over these numbers, I will share with you what he was eating. His HDL went up, and that's really hard. Medicine, excuse me, I'm gonna take a sip of water. They haven't found a medication that can really increase your HDL. It typically comes from exercise. Wine helps, just saying. But it went from 52 to 61. That's a big jump. He's never, ever had his HDL that high. And then his triglycerides, his trigs, which are often most influenced by food. Like if you have a really big meal the night before you go in and have fasting blood work done, you might have higher trigs. Went from 195 to 90. All right, here's the cool part though. And this is something that you need to consider, okay? Cardiovascular, and I have a note on this. I wanna make sure that I don't mess this up. All right, so your total cholesterol is not the only predictor of heart disease, okay? It comes down to your HDL to LDL ratio, okay? So they want to look at, I know a girlfriend of mine, her HDL was in the 80s, which is really high. And her LDL was kind of high. But because her HDL was so high, which is the one that they want up high, they were like, oh, we're not worried about you because your ratio is great. All right, so that's one of the number one predictors of heart disease. And the other one is your particle size. Okay, so they look at your LDL, and you have two types of LDL cholesterol. You have the really small, dense ones. Those are the ones that are damaging. And then you have the big, fluffy HDL particle or LDL particle sizes, and those are the ones that are not harmful. All right, so this cholesterol test, they actually looked at the particle size in Tom's blood as well. And his particle size assessment went from a B, and we're talking like a report card, so, A, B, C, D. It went from a B to an A because guess what? His LDL, very small, harmful particles went down, and then the amount of his big, fluffy, non-harmful particles went up, okay? That is amazing. Okay, so that is more of an indication, again, like I said, your HDL to LDL ratio, as well as particle size. That's more of an indication of cardiovascular disease risk, okay? So that's really my spiel for today. Coconut oil, it's not bad for you. It is a 90% saturated fat, natural oil. I will mention too that over 50% of the part of coconut oil is a lauric acid. It's a lauric fatty acid, which actually is an antiviral, antibacterial and antifungal in it. And so, and it gets turned into monolauric acid, which one of the only sources we have for that is breast milk. It's so good for you. It helps with your immune system. It helps with, like what we were talking about with, HDL versus LDL ratios. There's, a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. It's a great fat source. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you that go drink coconut oil from the jar or anything like that. But what I am saying is I eat it every day. My husband's eating it every day. We cook with it every day and we feed it to our kids. And I don't care if the American Heart Association or the American Diabetes Association or whoever, I don't care if they recommend vegetable oil because it's unsaturated. No way in hell am I eating that. As far as I'm concerned, it's sludge. And I'm going to go with the more natural things like butter from grass-fed cows, coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, and that's all I have. So I hope that this helps you feel a little bit better about using coconut oil in your diet. I will just hang out here for a second and see if anybody has any questions. Yeah, Shay, I see your comment. Good thing, because docs know nothing about nutrition. You know what? I can't fault them for it. They're not tested on it. I mean, unless it's something that they just truly become passionate about, then that doesn't pay the bills. And you go to somebody goes to a doctor and like, oh, you have high cholesterol. Well, here's a sheet of paper. Eat a low-fat diet and blah, 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 blah. And so what do people buy? They buy all this processed crap at the grocery store that is going to jack their insulin levels up, which is going to completely screw them. But that's a whole nother topic. Okay, so if you want to learn more about the USA, I'll bet they are tied to Monsanto. I wish that I had time to look that up, but it was kind of like I'm just going to put out there, I'm going to go live about this, I'm going to talk about what I know, and if somebody else wants to find out if they're tied to Monsanto, they can. But if you want to know more about the Freedom and Hope nutritional plan, or want to learn how insulin has effect on weight loss or what have you, you can find me at my YouTube channel, which is under Daily Dose of Tracy as well. You can post comments here. I'm happy to answer them. I hope that all of you have a wonderful and happy Father's Day. My little boy is dying for me to get in the pool, so I think I'm going to go ahead and put my bathing suit on and go celebrate. And I wish you all the best. Peace be with you. Muchos besitos. And this is your Daily Dose of Tracy Live, and I'm signing out. Have a good day.